Okay. Hi. So today we're going to talk about the basics of contour. Going back to the basics of series because I know a lot of you guys really liked it and I'm not abandoning it, I promise. Very annoying. I bought a monitor and I can't figure out how to set it up yet, so I'm still using the flip out thing. So if you see me like looking off, I'm trying to make sure that I'm like in focus. Also, just a quick little like disclosure, I am peeling currently. My face is peeling. So I've got some like dry, scaly skin happening on my forehead and my eyelids. It's a little distracting. We're going to pretend that it's not happening. Okay, so contouring. Like, what's the point of it, basically? Like, what is it exactly? You can think of, and I will link the concealing video because I touch on not just concealing like breakouts or dark circles or like covering up redness or whatever, but I also talk about like highlighting, using concealer to highlight the face. So, and I've mentioned this in some of my other videos in the series, that when we go in with a foundation, we're applying one color to our whole face, and skin is not one color, it's not opaque. So when you go in with your foundation, you're kind of flattening it a little bit, you're flattening your face a little bit. And by going in with your blush and your bronzer and your contour, you're sort of bringing life back. You're bringing color and you're bringing shape back. And that's really what contour is for, to highlight. Highlight is where you're like applying light colors to areas like high points of the face that you want to come forward. You want to bring those forward. So if I want my cheekbones to come forward more, I'm going to use a slightly lighter color up there. That's why we use like the shimmery highlight on our cheekbones, right? Because when we turn and the light catches that product, it reflects off, right? So high points. If you're contouring your nose, or if you're highlighting your nose and you do like highlight the tip, that's going to bring that area forward. So it's all about like areas that you want to highlight and bring forward. Contour is about minimizing those areas. It's a dark color. It's going to go back in space. It acts as a shadow. So if we're looking at my face, one of the reasons that you apply like a contour in your cheekbones is to kind of like chisel out that area a little bit. Applying a slightly darker color here, because if you look at my face, you can kind of see like a little bit of a shadow, right? Like right in here, but it's light. So we're sort of like intensifying that, and it makes this area look like it's going in a little bit more because you're intensifying that shadow, which in turn is going to make like this area look a little bit lighter, like it's coming forward, like your cheekbones coming out a little bit more. It's just kind of like sculpting the face. So that's like the simple answer, is that it's like basically acting as a shadow. Now, typically, contour is going to be more cool toned than a bronzer. That's kind of the difference between the two. A bronzer is meant to bring warmth back to the face, so it's going to be a little bit more on like the warm side, the orangey or red side. It's going to mimic the way your face would look if you had a little bit of a tan. Contour, you're not trying to do that. Now, depending on your skin tone, and I use her as an example often because she's medium and quite warm, is Desi Perkins. I watch her contour with her bronzer often. Like, she'll use her bronzer to contour her nose. It works for her skin tone. If I did that, I would look insane. Can't do it. So, especially if you are fair-skinned, it's nice to keep in mind that a contour should be more cool toned than your bronzer. The palette that I have been using to contour, and a great example of this, is the Wayne Goss, the Radiance Boosting Face Palette. This is in the, I think it's the lightest palette. It's in the shade Light Gold. Light Gold. So this is the bronzer, and then this is the contour shade. So you can obviously see that like the bronzer is warmer and the contour shade is a much more cool toned color. I'm going to link some of my favorite products down below, creams and powders, and I'll delineate whether or not it leans a little bit more cool toned or warm, so that you can kind of like pick. But basically, if you happen to be like very, very fair and you have a blue undertone, say you lean a little bit more pink or even like neutrally, then you're gonna want like a slightly more cool toned contour. If you are much warmer, and particularly if you're like a little bit more medium, you're going to want something that's going to be like a little bit warmer, because the really, really cool toned contours can just end up looking like very ashy on your skin. I've said this a million times. I don't do makeup on other people, so unfortunately I don't know everything about like all the skin tones. So that's like the best advice that I can give you, just based on like my experience with me and what I've seen on other people, I guess, or heard from other people. Okay, so when it comes to contouring, I really love to, now right now I don't have any bronzer, blush, just foundation and concealer. So I did do like a little bit of highlighting with concealer, but like not too much. For contouring, I love to contour my cheekbones, just a little bit, my nose, around my mouth, and my jawline to hide the pasta. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, I use creams and powders, but recently I've been preferring powder. I think just because it's summer and it's a lot warmer and it feels a little bit more lightweight. Creams just kind of like sit a little heavy for me. But once again, I'm going to, all the tips that I'm telling you are going to apply to creams and powders no matter what. So the brush that I like to use to contour is the Morphe R31. And the reason for that is just because you turn it and it gets like a little bit thinner. So it just kind of like fits in here really nicely. There are plenty of brushes and I will try to find a bunch and just like link them down below because I kind of like I jump from this brush to the next brush, affordable, more expensive, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of options here. So I like to use the tip of the brush and just kind of dip into the powder like this. I always tap off my brush to make sure I'm not going in with too much product. And then if I like turn my face, you can see kind of, what's the easiest way to do this? You can see like where it goes in, right? I mean, if I'm like this, you can kind of see like that's where the hollow of my cheekbone is. So I'm really just kind of intensifying that, but I don't want it to be like too much. So I'm going to go just in that area with a very light hand. And once again, and I talk about this often, I hold my brush like pretty far back and just kind of like, I'm hardly touching my skin. And I like to focus like right in the part where I want like the most pigment, I mean, relatively speaking, because I don't want that much pigment, but right here. And then just kind of like slowly blend it out towards my ear, ever so slightly down. Now for my face shape, it looks very unattractive if I like go in any further, if I try to like do a little bit more rounded cheekbone, if I take it all the way down. I've tried those things and I've kind of like come to the conclusion that just putting a teeny little bit right in here adds enough of like a cut, so it like really makes my cheekbone pop, but it doesn't look unnatural or weird. And that color just kind of like works really beautifully as a shadow for my face. You've probably heard the trick about like going from like taking a brush and going from like your ear to the corner of your mouth. That's like a fine rule of thumb, I think. But it's not necessarily like foolproof all the time. You can kind of take a brush and just like fit into the hollow of your cheek. It's really just going to depend on like your face shape. I find that like this kind of shape is the most flattering because that's how my like cheekbone tends to go anyway. So if you have that kind of a face shape, like don't fight it. You know what I mean? I mean, you can. It's going to take probably a little bit more work if you're trying to like create more of like this shape. But my face just doesn't do that, so I try not to fight that. And you really don't need a ton of product. Just like that. And it just makes the biggest difference. Now for my jawline, and I have talked about this before, I love to give myself a double chin. Super cute. And basically the area that comes... Okay, they're playing music like so loud upstairs. I don't know why I'm filming on a Friday. This is such a mistake. Anyway, the area that comes forward that I want to push back in space is where I'm going to put my contour. So if I make a double chin, this spot, not a huge fan. So that's where I'm going to put my contour. If I were to just put it along the edge of my jawline, it would, when I made a double chin, it would make this area go back in space and this come forward even more. So it's not going to be flattering for everybody. You may have seen like people like Kim Kardashian like draw a line like literally on her chin and like blend it out. That works if you have a long like chin that you're trying to like make look shorter and you already have this like cut area under here. That works. But for me, it doesn't make any sense. I don't have this like long Nefertiti like chin situation. So I want to push this area back. So I usually start like right underneath my chin because that's where I like want the most pigment. And I kind of just keep the double chin popping. So directly underneath, because like no one's really going to see that. I'm 5'2", no one's going to see under there, you know what I mean? Nobody's shorter than me. And then slowly just kind of like blend it out And if I want to, sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't, depends on how much bread I've been eating. I just kind of like blend up a little bit because you can kind of see how like this connects, you know? So I want to try to like push that back a little bit. Once again, holding my brush back pretty far. And then I don't really touch this area, but I just kind of like blend out. And then if you feel like maybe you've applied a lot and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to blend with like the rest of my neck, you can kind of just like drag a little bit down your neck in the natural grooves of your neck. Not to like do any more contouring, but just to make sure that all the colors in this area are cohesive, you know, because otherwise it could look like a little strange. The thing about contour is if you can find a color that's very, very close to something that you think works, as long as you're blending well, it's gonna look good. You know what I mean? Just keep a light hand, don't apply too much, and blend. And you're gonna be all right, I promise. So that just makes a really nice difference, you know? When I like do that, it looks like a shadow now. Anyway, that's that. For my nose in particular, I would say like as far as cheekbones and like your jawline go, if you're not using a contour and you just want to use your bronzer and you're just trying to add a little bit more like shape but warmth to the face, using your bronzer, like you can probably get away with it. Using your bronzer, I mean, depending on like your skin tone, using your bronzer to contour your nose, like I said, if I did that, I would look so crazy. Like these colors, now this does have shimmer in it, so obviously I wouldn't use that. You don't want to use that to contour anything with shimmer because it's pushing things back with the darkness and bringing them forward with the shimmer. Not a great idea. It would look insane. Like it would just look obvious and insane. So the cool tones are very important for particularly the center of your face, I think. So this is a really interesting brush. This is expensive. It's from Beautylish, the Yano series by Beautylish, brush number 9. It's a little bit longer and a little bit when you turn it, it goes a little bit flat. You know, it gets a little bit wider when you turn it like that. What I like about it is that it's very soft, but it does come to a little bit of a point. So it helps you draw certain shapes, but blends really nicely. I'm gonna zoom you in because we're doing my nose. Once again, sorry about the flaky skin. It's really driving me crazy. So for my nose, I like to refine the tip of my nose. And I have like kind of a bump that makes my nose like a little bit more just crooked looking, you know? Anyway, I'm gonna dip into this powder, tapping it off. And I like to start with the tip, so just underneath the tip. So right there, and the reason that I do this is because it lifts it a little bit. I'm going to refine the tip by bringing the darkness in ever so slightly. Okay, so now that I've put down the majority of the product, I'm wiping my brush off on a paper towel, which I always have handy. Oh my God, sorry, that was probably really loud. And I'm going in with like basically a clean brush and I'm just going to buff that powder. And then as I buff it, so I place the pigment in the area where I want the most, and then I'm gonna go in and blend with this. I'm also peeling on my nose, which is really cool. And as I blend, I'm gonna take whatever is left over up. And for the most part, I like to just refine the tip, so I don't really need that much like extra product. I'm just kind of like using whatever's left over to blend a little bit, you know? And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, just blending, slowly bringing it up. Because I've found that if you have like a bumpy area up here, honestly, it's just better not to put too much product there. Okay, and then I also contour around my lips, and I can insert the like video where I talk about this in depth because it's definitely not necessary, but it's kind of a nice little trick. So I'm just gonna go through it really quickly while I talk about other things. One thing I think that people should keep in mind is just that contouring, because you've probably seen so many of those videos on TikTok or on Instagram where people are like applying so much highlighter and so much contour and so much bronzer and all that. You don't need that much. I'm not applying a ton of contour. Even the fact that I'm like contouring my lips and contouring my nose, I'm not applying that much. I'm using a really light hand, and that's kind of the point, you know? It doesn't have to look like you're wearing so much makeup. I love applying these little like contouring tricks when I'm doing very natural makeup. I just do it a little less, you know? Something else to keep in mind is that you can apply these tricks to your eyes as well. Now, if you want an in-depth video about contouring your eyes, please let me know. I think I've done them in the past, but I can do an updated one, like literally just using your contour to contour your eyes. Let me know if you want to see that. I kind of feel like I'm missing things, but I feel like that was like the basics of contour. So let me know, obviously, if you have any questions, just like leave them in the comments down below and I'll try. I feel like I'm pretty good at getting back to a lot of people. So I'll try to get back to you on that. And let me know what other basics you want to see. I know somebody wanted to see the basics of eyeliner. I'm still trying to figure out like how I even want to tackle that. But the series will continue. All right, guys, I hope this helped, and I'll see you at some point soon. Bye-bye.